Now, it's hard to believe that some emails written on a university campus in Norwich could be quite so damaging. Today, Saudi Arabia's chief climate change negotiator, no less, said the leaked emails from scientists at the Climate Research Unit at the University of East Anglia will have a huge impact on next week's Copenhagen summit, even as its independent review gets underway. And now Newsnight's been told about serious concerns over the computer programme used to produce the global temperature record at the heart of the row. Here's our science editor, Susan Watts.
The world's most important oil producer, Saudi Arabia, today said the row over the emails from the Climatic Research Unit will flare up again at next week's climate change talks, predicting that they'll have a huge impact on the Copenhagen conference. He told the BBC that many developing countries share his views about Climategate, as he calls it, and that the climate scandal is sending a wake-up call to the international community. In an email to the BBC, he seems to be stepping back to the days when Saudi Arabia denied man-made warming exists. It appears from the details of the scandal that there is no relationship whatsoever between human activities and climate change. Most climate scientists strongly disagree with that. They point to indirect evidence such as reduction in Arctic sea ice, retreating glaciers, rising sea levels and shifting patterns in the seasons. They also point to two other data sets which reach the same conclusions as the Climate Research Unit on temperatures, using independent observations and analysis. Today, the university announced an inquiry into the furore. We asked the Vice-Chancellor about the Saudi intervention. He's said that, in his view, this whole furore will have an impact on the conference.
Well, in my view, one of the reasons for having a review is to speed so that we all know exactly what of those allegations stand and which fall.
I understand that some climate scientists are suggesting to government that the situation is potentially so damaging that they'd like to see the UK global temperature record reanalysed from scratch to clear the air. And that might not be such a bad idea, given some of the fresh concerns raised with Newsnight about the quality of the programming in question. This is the source code from the Climatic Research Unit. John Graham Cumming is a software engineer. He's not a sceptic on climate change, but he is shocked by what he's seen in the programming. He compared it with code in the same language written by NASA.
Well, if you look at the NASA stuff, it's really professional. You can look at it, you can see the history. If you look at the work that's done here by these alleged CRU files, it's not the sort of thing you'd expect to see, certainly in commercial industry. You would not see this kind of source code because it's not clearly documented. There's no audit history of what's happened to it. So it would be below the standard you'd expect in any commercial software.
OK, and tell me about the bug that you found in one part of the program.
The programming language actually has a problem, and they've put in some code to deal with that error. Unfortunately, in doing so, they've introduced another error, and the upshot of this is that if the error occurs, the underlying error occurs, they will skip over data that they're trying to plot without any warning to the end user. So in some senses, data in here is being lost.
There are also plaintive comments by one of the programmers at the University of East Anglia trying to grapple with the software.
And so in here, he says some things like, something's very wrong, it's my programming ability, isn't it? And, you know, once again, it's further confirmation that my abilities are below what is required here.
In fact, the programmer is disarmingly frank. He goes on, yep, my awful programming strikes again. So if you were betting billions or trillions of dollars on the basis of this code, is that something you'd be comfortable with?
I don't think I would be comfortable with that because it's not obvious what it's doing and why it's doing it, and that needs to be made clear.
An amateurish approach over programming doesn't necessarily undermine the unit's final results, and the government told us tonight that there's not currently a case for reanalysis of the data. But the university review announced today, chaired by a former civil servant chosen by the university itself, won't report until next spring, not soon enough perhaps to stop the Saudis or others using the row as ammunition at Copenhagen.
Susan Watts reporting to discuss this. I'm joined from Liverpool by Dr. Benny Pizer, Director of the Global Warming Policy Foundation, and in the studio by Professor Robert Watson, Chief Scientific Advisor to the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. Robert Watson, let me come to you first. there's going to be an independent review, but don't we need now for all the raw data to be laid on the table so that people can make proper judgments on everything?
Yes, we need the University of East Anglia to get permission from the Met offices around the world to get all of this data open and transparent so it can be freely analysed. I agree completely.
And you worked at UEA as a professor?
Correct.
Yes. So at the moment, would you accept that part of the problem has come from the fact that you haven't had the normal process of scientific validation? You haven't been able to cross-question the scientists on the basis of their judgments?
No, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has looked not only at the UEA analysis, but also the analysis done by NASA and by NOAA. And as was stated in your own programme, the results are basically in full agreement. Not only are the 3 data sets and the analysis in full agreement, there's also the other data of rising sea levels, melting glaciers, melting Arctic sea ice, all arguing very strongly that we are changing the Earth's climate.
Benny Peiser, is that good enough for you to be able to see everything that's coming out?
We obviously need this inquiry desperately. People are beginning to lose trust in the scientific community, particularly the climate science community. And we are very, very pleased that the inquiry now has been set up. We've been calling for that inquiry for many days. And we have to get to the bottom of this scandal, which is sending shockwaves around the world.
Is it a scandal?
Oh, it's a massive scandal. It's the biggest science scandal in living memory.
You shed some crocodile tears there, didn't you? Because doesn't it rather help your case to have this scandal?
I don't know what case you're talking about.
Well, what I'm talking about is the fact that because you have got a scandal like this reinforces your rather more sceptical view on some of the data that's coming out.
Well, we are not questioning the basic science of global warming. That's not our issue. We are, however, very concerned about issues like transparency, openness. The university has been asked for many, many years to share that information, that data, with independent researchers, and it has declined a freedom of information request. It has declined to share that information and data, and therefore we don't really know what is going on. We need to know.
OK, Professor Watson, do you accept that this is one of the worst scandals that there has been, and it's going to cast a cloud over Copenhagen? I mean, listen to what the Saudis have said.
It's definitely a very unfortunate situation. It's absolutely imperative that this independent review announced today by UEA is carried out as quickly as possible. It will clearly have a cloud over the debate in Copenhagen, but the vast majority of the science, which does not rest on just this one data set, all points to the fact the Earth's climate is changing. We cannot explain those changes unless we invoke human activity.
Benny Peiser used the word scandal. Would you use the word scandal?
I would certainly argue that those email trails are inappropriately phrased.
But scandal, it's a scandal, isn't it?
I would say it's an inappropriate situation that the independent review clearly has to dig into. Was there any misrepresentation of data? Was there loss of data? What was done inappropriately or not? So it's clear we need to completely look at this in an open and transparent manner.
OK, and Benny Peiser, is it realistic that everything is just laid open? In the world of science, don't people work privately to some extent?
No, we are not concerned about emails. We are concerned with basic data on which some of the climate reconstruction, the history of climate over the last 1,000 years has been reconstructed. Let's not forget, the researchers at the University of East Anglia have essentially eliminated the medieval warm period. Up until fairly recently, it was generally accepted that there was a warm period in the Middle Ages that was as warm as today, perhaps even warmer. Now, their research has cast doubt on the existence of that warm period. It's not so much
sorry to interrupt you, but what about Professor Robert Watson's point that it's not just the University of East Anglia that has been looking at this? There are other scientists who've been looking at it and come to the same conclusions.
No, we are not talking here about the modern warming period. I don't think there is much doubt about that. It's about whether it is unique in the history of the last 1,000 or 2,000 years. That is the big controversy.
OK, we must leave it there. I'm grateful to you both. Thank you very much for being with us. Thank you.